Hello everyone, and welcome to another video on my Tide of Iron scenario called Little Stalingrad, where the beasts were caged, that I've been working on. I just completed one playtest, which is what my previous video was about, and I described a little bit of how the scenario went and what the outcome was. I've now got it set up for another playtest run. Russian Division 1 sets up on these two boards and or the boards in the middle here. Russian Division 2 sets up on these two boards and or also the two ones in the middle. And the Russians receive reinforcements as I've depicted here at the end of turn, or round, I should say, the end of round 3, 5, 7, and 8, and the Germans on rounds 2, 4, 6, and 7. The Germans also have the German reinforcements deck, and that's what they'll mostly be depending on when it comes to their infantry reinforcements. They'll mainly be receiving armor and some SD KFZs 251s, so the half tracks. They also have the artillery 1 deck and the operation cards clear mines and clear tank trap, which is what they'll have to do. You can see some minefields over here. Obviously the engineers can do that. An engineer can always, that's not a special card, that's just an ability. They always have an innate ability to clear the razor wire. Obviously, razor wire can also be cleared by heavy vehicles when they spend 2 movement points. So moving into such a hex would be 1 for the hex itself and then 2 more, and then you can actually clear it. And heavy vehicles aren't stopped by them either. Tank traps, you have to move in from an adjacent hex and then immediately stop, and then you can move off normally, but it will definitely slow the Germans down. Historically, this was a very heavily fortified area, and even had they broken through, which in the end they didn't manage, there would have been a third belt of defenses awaiting them. This was actually the second one. The Russian reinforcements enter here, here, and here. Any German reinforcements enter on their baseline, so to speak, so the last row of full hexes. Victory points are scored by controlling the victory objectives. The Russians score 1 victory point for each victory hex they control per round, so at the end of each round, and the Germans 5. So it will typically take a few rounds for the Germans to take 1 or 2 or perhaps 3 over, but then they score 4 victory points for each middle objective hex they control, so then they'll be able to catch up quickly. The Germans can also score 4 points for exiting heavy vehicles off the map, and they're also allowed to do that through the half hexes that you can see here. Otherwise it would become relatively easy to just block the exit hexes. And the Germans win a sudden death should they control all of the victory metal hexes at the same time. That seems like a far shot for that ever to occur, also because of the Russian reinforcements entering play, etc. But, you know, if you have a very experienced German player against a novice Soviet player, who knows what could happen. This is Hill 253.5, and if you control the victory hex over here, your artillery cards, because the Russians also have an artillery deck 2 and morale deck 1. Should the Russian deck ever run out, you just simply reshuffle the cards and you can keep drawing from it, because they had so much artillery massed here in the area that ever running out of artillery shells wasn't really an option. Anyway, what happens, as long as you control this hex, obviously at the end of the round, when you determine control over objectives in the command phase, as long as you are in control of that hex, your artillery attack cards hit on a 4+ rather than a 5+, and believe me, that makes a world of difference. In the in the playtest that I had of this scenario already, there were a couple of infantry really bunched up here in the woods. This hex could actually be seen, and this one was full with 3 squads, and they were hit by an artillery barrage, or I don't quite remember what the card is called, but here this hex was hit by 5 dice, I believe, and this one by 4, and there were 3 or 4 hits and very few cover rolled, and yeah, that was really devastating. Yeah, what else can I tell you about the scenario? The Russian engineers can also, apart from what they can always do, for instance, build an entrenchment in the same hex, which is, I believe, what this one intends to do here, so that the anti-tank gun will actually receive some extra cover from the entrenchment in the same hex, a +1. And of course, the squad itself, or at least one of them, will actually benefit from +2 cover as well. We also have fortified buildings in this scenario. This is a better example because there's actually not a unit in there at the moment. Spoiler alert, that's because line of sight to this hex is not blocked. So with the concussive firepower bonus and everything, that's actually a pretty dangerous hex to be in. But what it does do, it means a fortified building. If you have at least one entrenchment in it, you don't actually have to be in the entrenchment when it comes to the building to benefit from the extra cover. So these buildings have +5 cover rather than the normal +3. The operation cards for the Russians are Desperate Defenders and Massive Confusion, and Massive Confusion is actually shared, so that one goes for the Germans as well, so no combining fire in this scenario. The Desperate Defenders card, what it does is it allows Russian squads that are either pinned or what's it called, disrupted, to fire at half firepower anyway, and that also means, which you can find in the frequently asked questions, they can operate an anti-tank gun at half firepower as well. Yeah, so that's a little bit about the scenario. As I mentioned on my previous video, there are some new units in it as well. The Elephant, the Brummbär, what else do we have? An SU-76, there's also an SU-152, but it comes, there are several of them, 3 in the end, I believe, but they come onto the board as reinforcements. And finally, what I should also mention, but I don't have the cards handy, I really had to get them from one of the top shelves and move lots of boxes, etc., so I just left it for what it is for the time being. The Russians also have the Katyusha support, which they can use before the start of any action phase. So not action turn, but action phase. And that means a suppressive attack, and it otherwise works as an artillery card. And the Germans have something similar, the naval warfare card, and it does basically the same, but it's not a suppressive attack. It's a normal attack. Since they both have that type of card, the one with initiative goes first, should they want to use it. And the same thing goes, that's a special rule here for this scenario, since they hit on a 5+, that basically goes for, on a 4+, if you control the hill, that goes for that card as well, to make it worthwhile to actually use it. Yeah, well, I think that's already quite a lot of information about this scenario. I'm sure there's more I could tell you, but I intend to do some more playtest playthroughs, obviously, and maybe I'll also record one of them, at least partially. So thank you for watching. I hope I've sparked your interest. When it's done, it'll become available in PDF format on BoardGameGeek, and it'll also be published on www.commandsandcolors.net. So again, I hope this has sparked your interest. I hope you've enjoyed, and see you on the next one.